A boy named Thaddeus is heading to his grandfather's place for Christmas with his dad, Mr. Savannah, and his brother, Sid. While they're in the car, Mr. Savannah sees Thaddeus playing with his 8-ball toy and scolds him for bringing the toy on their holiday trip. Thaddeus says he only brought it along because it's Christmas.
I said no toys at grandfather's.
But Sid suddenly snatches the toy off his brother's hand. Thaddeus immediately complains to his dad about this, but Mr. Savannah tells him to shut up. He also tells Thaddeus that he needs to stand up for himself instead of always crying for help. Sid then mocks Thaddeus and returns the toy to his brother. Suddenly, Thaddeus sees his toy showing several weird symbols, and as he complains that Sid has broken it, he notices that there's no one in the car with him again. Thaddeus looks really scared, but there's nothing he can do.
Someone help me!
With the car now moving really fast. As the windows get frozen, the car finally stops, and Thaddeus heads out, only to find himself in a weird temple. He looks confused because he doesn't know how he got there, but as he walks around, he sees a wizard who immediately approaches him. As the wizard calls his name, Thaddeus asks how he knows it, and he says he's the last standing member of the Council of Wizards, who are meant to protect the world from the 7 deadly sins. He adds that he's getting weaker every day, and he needs a champion with a pure heart
and strong in spirit,
who will inherit his magic and take his place. Thaddeus looks interested in the position, but the wizard says he must prove that he really has a pure heart. Just then, the 7 deadly sins start tempting Thaddeus to reject the wizard's offer and be on their side by taking control of a powerful eye that is right in front of him. The sins sound quite tempting, but as Thaddeus is about to touch the eye, the wizard stops him. He then mentions that Thaddeus is not the champion he's looking for. Before Thaddeus can say anything, the wizard magically returns him to the car with his dad and brother. Thaddeus looks confused and disappointed, and he immediately tries to open the car door to see if he can return to the temple. Mr. Savannah and Sid don't understand what's going on, but they hold Thaddeus back from opening the door while the car is on the road. Unfortunately, this eventually leads to a crash that makes Mr. Savannah fly out of the car. Sid quickly checks on his dad and notices that Mr. Savannah is badly injured. As Thaddeus approaches them, Sid blames him for the crash.
You did this!
But as he tries to explain what happened earlier, he sees a message from the deadly sins on his 8-ball toy, telling him to find them. Meanwhile, the deadly sins taunt the wizard and tell him that they'll soon be free if he continues to grow weaker without finding a champion. The wizard then casts a seeker spell to help him find anyone who is worthy enough to become his champion. Many years later, a boy named Billy tricks some cops into leaving their car so he can check the address of a woman he thinks might be his mom. After he gets the address, he heads there immediately. But as he knocks on the door, he realizes that the woman living there is not his mom. Almost immediately, the cops also arrive and take him to social services. It turns out that when Billy was a kid, he went to the amusement park with his mom, but eventually got lost and never saw her again. Since then, he has been trying to find her by checking the houses of women with his surname living in the area. At the social services office, a counselor tells Billy that she doesn't understand why he keeps running away from all the foster homes he has been assigned. Billy says he doesn't need parents to play make-believe with, especially when he has a mom.
I got a mom.
The counselor asks where all his detective work has led him, but Billy says he knows that his mom is still out there. The counselor doesn't seem to care about this, and she says it's high time Billy moved on from a woman who didn't look for him, even though he believes he's at fault for running away to pick up his toy at the park. She then mentions that there's a new couple, Victor and Rosa, who are willing to take Billy in. She tells him not to mess it up because they're actually a nice couple. Even though Billy would rather enjoy being on his own, he's left with no choice but to leave the office with Victor and Rosa. As he enters their van, Victor and Rosa sound quite friendly and tell Billy that they were also foster kids when they were young. They add that they understand how he might be feeling, but they're sure he'll enjoy being with them. After they get home, Victor and Rosa take him inside to meet the other foster kids they've adopted over the years.
So much for the welcome party.
The first one Billy meets is Eugene, but he seems to be more focused on the game he's playing. He also sees Darla, who hugs him and says she's happy to have another brother. Billy still looks uninterested in being in the house, but he also meets another girl named Mary, who is having her college interview via phone call.
Mary, hi.
College interview.
Rosa and Victor sound excited to see that she could be going to college soon, and they also talk about how proud they are. Shortly after, Rosa offers to take Billy to his room, and on the way he meets a shy boy named Peter, who doesn't say anything. Rosa tells Billy not to think much about it, because Peter is like that with everyone. She then finally shows him his room, which he'll be sharing with a boy named Freddy. Rosa tells Freddy to make Billy feel at home, and as she leaves, he starts telling his new brother about his interest in superhero stuff. He also talks about Superman and how he once bought a bullet that was used to shoot the superhero. As he tries to touch Billy's bag to see what's inside, Billy gets defensive, but Freddy says he totally understands why his new brother won't want him to check his bag.
Kidding, again.
Shortly after, Billy heads to the bathroom and cancels out the last address he went to check for his mom. He also throws his jotter into the trash, after which he heads out for dinner. When he gets to the table, his new family puts their hands together to talk about how grateful they are to have a meal for dinner. Instead of joining them, Billy doesn't look interested, and he just watches them. The next day, as they arrive at school, Darla seems to be quite nice to Billy by telling him about the things in the school. However, Billy gets tired of this and tells her that she doesn't have to be nice to him because they're not really siblings. Darla looks disappointed to hear this, and as she walks away, Freddy consoles her and takes her to her class while Billy is left alone as he tries to explain what he meant. Elsewhere, a scientist studying mass hysteria interviews a lady about a temple she believes she once went to when she was young. As she talks about it, an older Thaddeus appears behind the scientist and tells her to ask the interviewee about some symbols. The scientist then shows the lady some symbols, and she suddenly remembers seeing something like that on her alarm clock. She says she recorded it, so Thaddeus interrupts the interview and tells the lady to show them the video.
Show me the video.
As she does, Thaddeus leaves the interview room, but the scientist follows him and complains about how he always interrupts her interviews. She adds that even though he's funding her research on mass hysteria, she doesn't appreciate him interrupting her. Thaddeus doesn't say anything, but as he enters his office, he brings out a door and says that the video just made him realize that the symbols appeared 7 times on the alarm clock before a portal to the temple appeared. As he then writes the symbols 7 times on the door, he tells the scientist that they're not studying mass hysteria because the temple is real. The scientist thinks he's delusional, like the people she has interviewed, but as she unknowingly touches the door, the portal appears, and she suddenly turns to dust and vanishes. Thaddeus doesn't seem to care about her, and he walks through the door and enters the temple.
I've been waiting for this moment.
The wizard looks shocked to see him, but he eventually remembers that Thaddeus
I remember you.
was one of the kids who failed his test many years ago. Thaddeus says he was hurt to have been told that he wasn't good enough. He also mentions that after that day, he realized that he truly didn't have a pure heart. Suddenly, Thaddeus releases the powerful lie, and the 7 deadly sins tell the wizard that they've found their champion before him. As they also get released, they attack the wizard and knock him out. After they then tell Thaddeus that he's their champion, the eye merges with one of his own. The wizard stands up and tells Thaddeus that the sins are just using him for their gain, and they'll unleash evil on humanity. However, Thaddeus knocks him out again
But no one's worthy.
and says he doesn't care. Elsewhere, Freddy joins Billy's table for lunch and starts talking about the possibility of having superpowers. He also accuses Billy of stealing his Superman bullet, but he denies it and walks away because he's tired of Freddy talking too much. After school that day, all the kids are about to head home when 2 bullies, Burke and Brett, hit Freddy with their truck. They also come down to beat him, but Billy doesn't seem interested in helping, so he decides to walk away.
What are you gonna do, go home and cry to mommy?
However, as he hears the bullies talk about Freddy's family, Billy attacks them and helps Freddy. This gets the boys pissed, and as Billy runs away, they follow him. Billy eventually runs into the subway, and the boys are unable to catch him. While he's inside, the other passengers suddenly disappear.
Hello?
And the windows start to get frozen as Billy wonders what's going on.
What's going on?
The subway stops, and he gets down, only to see that he's in a temple. Billy is extremely shocked by this, but he eventually sees the wizard and asks what's happening. He then tells Billy about his search for a champion, and how he thinks he has already found one. Billy looks confused, and as he asks where he is, the wizard tells him that the temple is called the Rock of Eternity. He adds that there used to be 7 wizards who protected the world from the deadly sins until they chose a wrong champion, who used his powers to seek revenge and set the sins free. He says it's also why he decided to only release his powers to someone with a pure heart.
I open my heart to you, Billy Batson.
He mentions that Billy is the right person, and that he needs to hold on to his staff and call the wizard's name to get his powers. Billy looks confused and says he doesn't think he's the right person, but the wizard says he's the only one the world has left. He also mentions that his brothers and sisters were killed by the deadly sins, and their thrones are now empty, so Billy has to accept his position as the new champion. Billy then holds the staff and asks the wizard for his name. The wizard says it's Shazam, and as Billy says it,
Shazam?
he turns into an adult man wearing a superhero costume. The wizard then passes on his powers to Billy, who asks why he looks different. The wizard says he has been transformed into his full potential to be the new Shazam. He also tells Billy to unlock his greatest power with his heart, because the thrones of his brothers and sisters will be waiting for him. Shortly after, the wizard turns to dust and vanishes.
Get me out of here!
Billy also finds himself back on the subway, but still as Shazam. Some of the passengers look at him strangely because of what he's wearing, and he quickly runs away when he gets to the nearest stop. Later that night, Rosa and Victor look worried that Billy isn't back home yet, and they wonder if he has run away already. Meanwhile, Peter enters the bathroom and sees Billy's jotter inside the trash. As Freddy is washing his plate in the kitchen, Shazam suddenly appears to him through the window and tells him not to shout. Unfortunately, Freddy can't control himself because he doesn't know who the stranger is, and he ends up shouting. Shazam then says he's Billy,
But now I look like this and I need your help.
and that he needs Freddy's help to understand what's going on with him because it seems he now has superpowers. As he leaves, Victor gets to the kitchen and asks why Freddy shouted earlier, but he says it was nothing. Shortly after, Freddy sneaks out of the house to meet Shazam, who is still trying to find a way to transform back into Billy. Freddy then asks for proof that he's Billy, and he brings out the Superman bullet he stole. He also says he knows they might not be close friends, but that he only called Freddy for help because he knows so much about superheroes. Freddy then feels Shazam's powers and asks if he already knows what his superpowers are.
What are your superpowers?
Shazam says he doesn't know yet, and Freddy makes him try out the possibility of being able to fly and do other things. Unfortunately, Shazam cannot fly, but he eventually shoots a lightning bolt with his fingers. Freddy is excited about this, and as he sees a thief about to rob a lady, he tells Shazam to help her. When he gets there, though, the lady has already handled the thief, and even though he doesn't need to do anything, he still uses his powers on the man. Following this, they head to a supermarket next to buy some drinks and snacks, but 2 robbers suddenly show up there. Freddy encourages Shazam to stand up to them, and as he warns them against stealing from the shop, one of them shoots him. Interestingly, the bullet doesn't kill Shazam, and Freddy realizes that he's bulletproof. He then tells the men to shoot Shazam again so he can record it. The robbers do this, and after recording the video, Shazam beats them up. After they leave the store, Freddy says he didn't think Billy was cool before, but that seeing him as Shazam has changed his mind. Billy also says sorry for how he acted earlier, and they both decide to head home. When they get there, Victor and Rosa are still talking about Billy, and they're too distracted when Freddy and Shazam enter the house. Before the boys reach their rooms, Rosa and Victor hear footsteps inside the house, and as they ask who it is, Freddy says he's the one, and that he just arrived with Billy.
Freddy, who is that?
It's Billy. He just...
Rosa and Victor are happy to hear this, but as they talk about coming to see Billy, Shazam tells them not to come. Rosa and Victor are shocked to hear the voice, and as they ask Freddy who he's with, he says that Billy has a problem with his voice because he's tired and wants to sleep. Freddy and Shazam then mistakenly enter Darla's room, and she looks shocked to see the big guy. Shazam quickly covers her mouth so that she won't shout, but Freddy tells him not to do that. He then tells Darla that Billy is Shazam, Shazam, and as she asks how he changed, he says that someone made him say the name Shazam. Suddenly, he turns into Billy again, and Freddy realizes that he can change by saying the name. They then beg Darla not to tell anyone about what happened. They also tell her that it's how she can be a good sister to them, and Darla agrees not to say anything to anyone. The next morning, Thaddeus goes to his father's company and interrupts a meeting just to show his father that he really saw something on the night of the crash.
So much easier to blame me, wasn't it?
Sid is also in the meeting, and he warns Thaddeus to leave before he calls security. However, Thaddeus doesn't look scared, and he throws Sid out of the window. Everyone is shocked by this, and Thaddeus then releases some of the monsters out of him. As he tells his dad that he has always hated him, Thaddeus also mentions that he's now more powerful than anyone else alive. One of the Sins then informs him that there's someone more powerful, and as Thaddeus asks who it is, they inform him that the wizard eventually found a champion. As he says he'll have to find the person and kill him, he tells the Sins to kill everyone in the boardroom, including Mr. Savannah. Elsewhere, Burke and Brett arrive at school with their truck, but as they walk away from it, they notice that it has suddenly disappeared. As they wonder where it went, the truck suddenly falls from the sky and gets destroyed. The boys are shocked by this, but Freddy comes close to them and pretends to console them, even though he knows that Billy was responsible for it. Shortly after, Billy turns into Shazam and tricks the school's security guard into letting Freddy leave school with him. The boys then go to an abandoned building where Freddy records videos of Shazam using his powers and unlocking new ones. He also posts the videos on YouTube, and they start getting lots of views. Shazam also uses his powers to get them a lot of money from the ATM to buy several things. As they spend some time playing a game as well, Freddy realizes that they don't have a lair yet, so they head to a real estate company,
and obviously we're gonna have to be making this purchase anonymously,
to start negotiations to buy a place fit to be a lair. They eventually disagree on the number of rooms they'll have in the lair, so they return to school. Everyone is already watching videos of the town's newest superhero, and Freddy says it's bad that people won't know he's the one who recorded the videos. Suddenly, Brett and Burke try to bully Freddy, but he warns them not to try it. They then ask if he'll send Billy to attack them again, but Freddy says that he knows someone more powerful. As he mentions that Shazam is his best friend, the boys think he's joking around, so he says he'll bring the superhero to the school. Brett and Burke still think he's lying, but they agree to wait for him in the cafeteria the next day to see if Shazam shows up. After the boys walk away, Billy asks why Freddy told the boys about Shazam, but he says he just needs to teach them a lesson that will make them stop bullying him. Billy says he can't believe that Freddy wants to use the powers for his benefit, even though he has been advising him against it. He adds that he's the one who should be doing what he wants, because the powers are his, but Freddy says they both have an equal share of it. Later that night, while the family is having dinner, Victor brings up a conversation
Sorry, Billy's hands on vacay.
about the new superhero, but Eugene says he's not impressed because Shazam isn't doing anything spectacular. Peter also says that his costume is bad, but Billy interrupts him and says that the hero might not have picked the costume. He also tells everyone to focus on the positives, but Freddy still mentions that he feels the hero isn't grateful enough for the power he has been given. Billy says he might just want some time for himself, but Freddy mentions that the hero shouldn't have to push his family away. Everyone at the table looks confused, but Billy eventually leaves the table angrily. The next day, Billy arrives at school but refuses to go in because he wants to enjoy more time being Shazam. Freddy says it's not right for him to miss school, but Billy tells him that he's now an adult. As he leaves, Freddy asks if he'll still come for lunch in the cafeteria, but Billy doesn't respond.
Sir Zaslat's still gonna eat in the cafeteria, right?
Shortly after, Billy starts moving around the city as Shazam, and he suddenly sees a truck about to hit Mary while she's distracted. He saves her immediately and calls her name while saying she needs to be careful. Mary looks shocked and asks how he knows her name, and he mentions that it's one of his superpowers. He then asks what's wrong with her, and she says that even though she got into her preferred college, she's having doubts about going
I don't know, leaving my family does not feel fun, you know?
because she doesn't doesn't want to leave her siblings and parents. Shazam looks shocked, and he tells Mary not to worry about them. He also tells her that she should be more interested in making herself happy instead of pleasing some strangers who aren't even her real family. Mary doesn't really like his advice, but she doesn't say anything. Elsewhere, Freddy disappoints everyone at school when Shazam doesn't show up, and Brett and Burke bully him.
He's not talking.
Shortly after, while Shazam is showing off his powers to make some money at a park, Freddy confronts him for failing to show up at the cafeteria. Shazam then says he's a superhero who can't afford to be doing petty things like that. As he also shoots some lightning bolts into the sky, he unknowingly bursts the tire of a moving bus with people inside. Shazam is shocked by this, but as the bus nearly falls off a bridge, he quickly runs to see if he can save it. Luckily, he's able to do this, and a news reporter interviews him as the newest hero in town. After his interview, Shazam sees Freddy nearby and talks about how he saved the bus. Freddy says it was his fault that the bus was going to fall, but Shazam tells him to focus on the positives. Freddy plays down what he did, and Shazam says he just wishes he was the one who got the powers. Freddy says it's true, and that he would have loved to be a hero instead of Billy, who turned out to be a bully.
And all you did was turn into a show-off and a bully.
As he walks away, Thaddeus appears behind Shazam and calls him the Chosen One. Shazam doesn't know who he is.
I'm sorry, can I help?
But as he asks if he's a villain, Thaddeus just tells him to give up his powers if he doesn't want to die. Shazam says he's unbeatable, but Thaddeus punches him hard and tells him that he's not like other humans. Shazam gets hurt, but before he recovers, Thaddeus picks him up and flies to the sky. Shazam looks scared and says he can't fly, but as Thaddeus punches him back to the ground, he suddenly realizes that he can now fly. Shazam then flies toward Freddy to ask for help, but before he can say anything, Thaddeus punches him into the ground. Shazam eventually enters a mall and tries to escape, but Thaddeus finds him. Before Thaddeus then kills him, he shouts the word Shazam and turns into Billy again.
Shazam!
With this, Billy manages to escape, but Thaddeus sees a video of Freddy talking to Shazam on the news. Unfortunately, Freddy is walking nearby, and Thaddeus decides to use him to find Shazam. Elsewhere, Billy arrives home and is scolded by his parents for running away again and missing school. Meanwhile, Mary and the other kids watch the news and see Freddy talking to Shazam. As Mary wonders why Freddy is talking to a superhero,
Are you saying Billy's a human power storm?
she realizes that Billy is Shazam. Darla then looks happy and says she's glad they figured it out without having to tell them. After Victor and Rosa are done scolding Billy, Mary and his siblings enter the room and tell him that they know he's Shazam. Billy says he doesn't think he'll be a hero anymore, and as he sees his jotter with Peter, he asks what he's doing with it. Eugene then mentions that he has helped Billy complete his search to find his mom, whose name is Marilyn. He adds that she lives just 2 bus stops away from them, and Billy runs out of the house to find her. Victor and Rosa see him running away, so they enter their van to follow him. Almost immediately, Freddy arrives home with Thaddeus, who has come to use the kids as a bargaining chip to make Shazam give up his power. Meanwhile, Billy finds Marilyn and tells her that he's her son. He also says sorry for running off at the park, but Marilyn mentions that she actually saw him with the cops and refused to identify herself as his mom because she thought he'd be better off with them. Billy can't believe this, and as Marilyn's husband calls her,
Marilyn, what's going on out there?
she tells her son that he came at a wrong time. Billy realizes that she doesn't even want him, and he says he's going back to meet his real family. Before he leaves, Freddy calls him, but as he answers the phone, Thaddeus tells him to come home immediately. Following this, Billy turns into Shazam and heads home. When he gets there, Thaddeus offers him the chance to save his siblings by giving up his powers.
Give me the power.
Even though Freddy tells him not to do it, Shazam agrees to save them, and Thaddeus creates a portal to the Rock of Eternity. As he then holds the wizard's staff and tells Shazam to transfer his powers while some of the deadly sins have now been released, Billy's siblings enter the Rock of Eternity and throw something at Thaddeus's head. Surprisingly, this leaves a cut on his head, but as he gets pissed and nearly attacks them, Shazam punches him and throws him away. He then helps his siblings escape to another room. As they they wonder how they'll leave the Rock of Eternity now that the door they came in through is locked, Shazam remembers that the last time he came, he only had to think about the subway to leave. Following this, he teleports them to an amusement park just by thinking of it. Shazam also turns to Billy again and walks around the crowded park to prevent Thaddeus from seeing him. Shortly after, Thaddeus shows up at the park and threatens to kill everyone there if Billy doesn't surrender.
You're still just a scared little boy.
He doesn't wait to get a response and immediately starts burning up the place. Billy then tells his siblings that he needs to protect them by going up against Thaddeus. Freddy and the others think it's too risky, but Billy says he can't be a true hero if he can't save his family. As he then turns to Shazam, he attacks Thaddeus, but he's not strong enough to take him down. While they're fighting, Freddy remembers that they were able to hurt Thaddeus when he released the sins from his blue eye. Since they can help Shazam by making Thaddeus release the sins to come after them, Mary taunts him, and he does just as predicted, though he keeps one of the sins inside him. Mary and the others quickly run away, and Shazam continues fighting Thaddeus. After a while, Shazam turns into Billy again, but Thaddeus grabs him and nearly drowns him.
Friends can't help you anymore.
Mary sees this and shoots Thaddeus, but he stops the bullet. As Billy then transforms again, it's already too late, because Thaddeus has now caught his siblings. Even though he's left with no choice but to surrender, Freddy tells Shazam not to give up his powers. He also mentions that if Shazam can remove the eye of the deadly sins from Thaddeus, he'll be powerless. Instead of trying this, Shazam surrenders. And as he holds the staff, the deadly sins enter Thaddeus's blue eye again. Suddenly, Shazam remembers what the wizard told him about the thrones of his brothers and sisters. Just then, he blasts off Thaddeus and tells his siblings to hold the staff and call his name. They initially call him Billy, but he tells them that his name is Shazam. After calling him Shazam, they all turn into heroes like Billy. Thaddeus looks pissed and releases some of the sins to attack the new heroes. Superhero Freddy then tells Shazam to remember to take out Thaddeus's eye when they're fighting. As he and the others take on the other sins, Thaddeus charges at Shazam, and they start fighting again. After a while, Shazam realizes that the last sin left inside Thaddeus is envy, so he taunts the monster to leave his host.
And that's why all the other sins never invite him out to play, man.
Envy gets pissed by this, and he leaves Thaddeus's body to attack Shazam. Unfortunately, Thaddeus nearly falls off the building, but he holds on to something. His hand eventually slips, but as he falls, Shazam strikes down Envy and goes to save Thaddeus. He then takes Thaddeus back to the park, where his superhero siblings have also fought well against the other sins. Following this, Shazam removes the eye of the deadly sins from Thaddeus, and as the monsters get caged inside, everyone at the park claps for the heroes who just saved them. Shortly after, Shazam takes his superhero siblings to the Rock of Eternity to keep the eye imprisoned. Before they leave, superhero Freddy admires the place and tells the others that they can use it as their lair.
Lair? We got a lair!
They all agree with this, but they still head home first. The next day, while the family is having breakfast, Billy tells them to put their hands together, and Rosa and Victor look surprised. Billy then thanks his parents and siblings for accepting him into their home. He also says he won't run away again, and they all look happy. Later that day, at school, Freddy sits alone in the cafeteria while everyone stares at him because of what happened the other day. Suddenly, Mary, Eugene, Peter, and Darla come over to sit with him, and as he asks what's happening, Shazam enters the cafeteria
Freddie Freeman!
And tells all the students that Freddy is his best friend. Everyone, including Brett and Burke, looks shocked, but Shazam says he has another surprise for them. As he then sits down at the table, Superman walks in and leaves everyone incredibly surprised.